Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
John, you're frozen on my screen. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but on my side it says you're muted. Everybody can see my plants, my dry erase board. I'm the only one on here. I'm waiting for John to show up. Just letting you guys know. I'm not the best at small talk, so we'll just have to wait for John here. I lost him somehow. Guess I should keep my cell phone close in case he needs to call me. Huh? I guess I'll try to keep you guys entertained if you're watching live. This is my office. As you can see, I have a dry erase board, which is glass, which I highly recommend because it's so much easier to take care of over years versus just your normal bathroom wall that they use for most of it. I've got my little plant here, which provides me oxygen. Nope, there's John. Sorry, John. I don't know what happened. And I still can't hear you. And let me know if there's anything I need to do on my end. I don't know. Okay.
Okay, how about now?
Yep, now I can hear you.
Great. And I apologize, everybody. This is I've been having some intermittent connection issues with my my end of internet, but I'm glad you were vamping Doug. You're a good man. And I'm just putting. Hang on one second.
True of the office.
Exactly. So, well, good to see you, Doug, and good to see everybody. Welcome to Word Balloon Live. I'm sure Doug already introduced himself, but for the purposes of my audio audience, who will hear this in about 2 days, ladies and gentlemen, crime comic writer extraordinaire, Doug Wagner. Welcome to Word Balloon.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
And congratulations on a great comic you and Brian have created. I think really, well, first of all, your previous works as well. I'm a big 12 gauge fan, but very excited for Thomas River, a super spy out of Baltimore. Give us the 10-cent pitch on Thomas River. And after doing so, I have your Kickstarter video lined up, and we'll get Doug's point of view as well.
Oh, sweet. So the quick 10-cent version of this is Thomas River is a CIA operative, and at the beginning of the story, we have an unprecedented terrorist attack. He's called in, obviously, to go find out who is behind all of this. And immediately, step one, he finds out everything he thought was going to be true and everything that should be true isn't. He's thrown into like this, immediate like questioning everything he kind of believes, like in himself. And like the way we approach Thomas is like, he's your everyday guy. He's your standard, American, raised in Baltimore, like you said. Like he believes in the hope of America and the promise of America. So when these things start getting thrown at him, it really throws him for a loop, and trying to figure out what's true and what isn't true about what I believe. And so we've had a lot of fun playing with that.
That's awesome, man. Did the story change in today's weird atmosphere? How long ago have you guys been developing this?
We started about 5 years ago, and so the weird part about it was, this first story I wrote, pretty much the way it's going to be delivered, probably 4 years ago, maybe even longer. And in a weird kind of way, you hear like sometimes you write stuff and it starts becoming true. And we were kind of playing with this perspectives of like right and left, and what do these two extremes mean, and what's the middle actually look like, and those kind of things. In a scary way, the stuff we put in this book that people told us nobody would believe is currently kind of happening. So it's a weird for both of us. Like Brian and I, at one point, Brian called me. He's like, "I'm just going to stop drawing. Like everything I'm drawing." It's happening. We have powers.
No, I hear you, man. Well, let's hear. I'm going to share my screen and play the Kickstarter video that you and Brian made for Thomas River. Here we go. And then I got to hit share audio. So boom, and let's begin.
I'm Brian, and welcome to the Thomas River Kickstarter. Even as a small kid, I was a big comic book fan. I would always project myself into the role of the title characters, and every towel and pillowcase in the house gave me the potential to be a superhero. As I grew up, I acquired this same love and fascination for action movies. I wanted to create a comic similar to all the movies I love. Movies like Sicario, Skyfall, John Wick, and the Bourne franchise, with one key exception. I wanted a character I could more relate to, a character that had grown up and experienced a life similar to mine. And that is Thomas River. I wanted to team up with a writer I trusted, so I went with my old pal, Doug Wagner. I knew he would deliver. Doug's a character guy, and I tend to be more of an action guy, so I knew this was going to be the perfect combination, and I have to admit, it turned out even better than I had hoped. But we knew we needed somebody to help handle the details of running a campaign so that Doug and I could concentrate on creating. That's where 12 Gauge Comics came in. We also wanted a way to reach out directly to the fans, connect with those that enjoy the same types of stories we do, and build a community. Kickstarter is the perfect place for that. Thomas River is about a young Black business owner in Baltimore, but he's really the CIA's best kept secret. So when someone threatens the United States and the president needs discretion, Thomas goes into action. His mission is always the same, to bring justice by any means necessary. In this story, he finds that nothing is as it appears. He is assaulted at every turn and isn't sure who to trust. Good thing, Thomas River is much more than he appears. The first issue is completely done. It's ready to print and ship. All we need to know is how many. I can't tell you how excited we are to get this first issue into your hands. Be sure to check out the rewards we've put together down below, including a couple of variant covers from some buddies of mine, Frank Quietly and Bingal. We've started this crazy ride, and your support can help us finish. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time aside to check out our campaign, and hopefully I'll see you at a convention in the near future. stay safe, and let's all be superheroes.
Good stuff, man. Very cool looking.
And it's just unfair to me that Kevin Brian has, like, he almost has like a Morgan Freeman voice, and then he has the charisma of like Dwayne Johnson. You know, like there's a part of me that hates me or hates him for that. I mean, he could so easily be like a narrator on a documentary or something, and just like, I know you know him well, and like, I mean, he's just such a good, wonderful person, and I hate every moment of it.
Doug, have you always, because I know you did the ride with 12 Gauge, have you always been part of 12 Gauge from day one?
Yeah, at the very beginning, it was Kevin Gardner, who's the president, and then he brought me along, and we kind of started getting things rolling. Then we hooked up with Cully and Brian, Cully Hamner, and we kind of started like spitballing and trying to figure out how do you publish comics. You know, that's how it all got started.
Well, I've been a fan of 12 Gauge since the imprint began, and I remember meeting Rosario Dawson at San Diego with, was it OCB? Wasn't that a cult?
OCT, like October.
OCT, that's right. Okay, yeah, because Occult Crime
Task Force.
Task Force, thank you. That's why I thought maybe either D for Division or Bureau, OCB. Right. So yeah. No, and I love that. I love the ride. I'm a massive fan of the ride as well. So yeah, no, great work over the years. So all you 12 Gauge guys, and we'll talk about some of your other crime comics in a second. But no, Thomas River, really, it's a cool idea. Brian and I talked about a lot of the particulars last week in our conversation, and actually, I'm bringing back the Kickstarter. Okay, so you got 9 days to go right now, and hey, awesome, you're over your goal. Fantastic. You might have been last week, but congratulations, that's terrific. So now we're at the stretch period.
Yep, we're at the stretch period, and I mean, I can't tell you how excited Brian and I have been that we got our goal, and it takes a lot of pressure off because we kind of pressured Kevin to try his first Kickstarter, so like when you do, there's a lot of pressure on you as a creative to go, man, if we don't make our goal, Kevin's going to hate us forever, you don't want to come out and fail at anything, right? And so it's kind of chancy for us, but we're really happy that we made it. It's really exciting.
Did you choose to do Kickstarter because of, things like obviously with COVID, paralyzing Diamond for a few months? Were those kind of factors why you chose to do it this way?
Tons of factors. Obviously with the pandemic going on, there was so much going on and so much uncertainty was the biggest part. And, as you know, as well as anybody, like Diamond had to put things on hold for a while. Comic book stores were closed all across the country. Publishers were saying, hey, we don't know when we're going to be able to put out new books or when we're going to, they're pushing things back years.
Yeah.
So it just came, we started talking about it and, we're like, we need to figure out a way to fund this book so that Brian and I can keep doing it. We don't know when it's going to come out through regular distribution. What about a Kickstarter for the first issue? And let's see where that takes us. And so that, like you said, everything was, the pandemic's obviously changed everything for everybody. And it was just, we naturally evolved in this direction. And I think we're enjoying it so far.
That's cool. Is the plan to, subsequent issues also do Kickstarters for those? I mean, what is the plan beyond this first issue?
Yeah. After this and after it did so well the first 2 weeks, Brian and I immediately said, hey, we kind of want to do it this way for now on. So like the current plan, as you know, like with what the pandemic, I think, taught everybody is like, hey, stay on your heels a little bit right now. You don't know how things are going to change. But it was going to be like a mini series. And now we've decided we're going to make it a mini series, but it's going to be bigger issues of mini series. So instead of like, say, 5 issues, we're going to do 3 larger. Brian loves to call them fat books. I don't know why he uses that term, but he's like, I like fat books. And so we're going to do a little bit thicker, deliver a little bit more for your money. And it's just, dude, like, I can't tell you how much it's changed everything. Like even the way we're approaching the next 2 issues already, we've gone, okay, so we don't have to worry about page count. We don't have to worry about format. we can do whatever we want now. And that kind of scared Brian and I a little bit, because we're like, that opens the door to new things we haven't thought of before. So we're really excited to see where like this can take us, like being able to not have to worry about 20 or 22 pages. And kind of like, hey, if we want to put a chapter break in here or a chapter break in there, like, how can we do that? And if I need 2 more pages for a scene, I can just write them. Like, yeah, it's an exciting time.
I think that's great, man. And truly, Brubaker has said the same thing about a lot of his current projects. And also, listen, nobody knows what's going to happen. I think in 2021, I have a feeling that the monthly 22-page comic is an endangered species now more than ever. I think the price point is at a ceiling that, I mean, and I'm sure you felt the same way 20 years ago when we finally got over $2 for a comic. And it's just like, okay, how high is this going to go? And I do think a lot of the publishers are playing with bigger, fatter books, using Doug's words, Brian's words, pardon me. And yeah, I hear you, man. And it's true. I mean, it's like, no, this really needs to kind of work itself out. And stores have to be prepared for the change as much as consumers do. And I think it's a benefit to consumers that we are getting fat books. And I think it helps you guys creatively as well. But yeah, I mean, it's just inevitable. Things have to change, and they've always had to adjust. And then now we're in this new phase of, we don't know what the next chapter is, but it's coming.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the pandemic, from my viewpoint anyway, I think what you've seen is we've known for years, right, that the monthly book has its problems. And there's been, we've run into hiccups, but we've managed, just through sheer love, I think, of the medium, to keep things rolling.
Yep. The
pandemic has made everything accelerate as far as evolving. And so we have to evolve faster now. And, I mean, I love my comic books and I love comic book stores, and I got a lot of friends that run stores. And I'm hoping we can all figure out a way to make all this better than it is now. I love comics, but we got to figure out a better way for not just fans, but for retailers and for publishers and for creatives and everybody that's involved. I think we can come up with a better way.
I hear you, man. I was looking at your stretch goals now. So yes, because you've reached it, first issue is going to be 48 pages.
Yep.
That's outstanding. That's amazing. Are you putting any back matter in there in addition to the story?
I think there's a couple of pages of back matter that we're going to be in there no matter what. Just some characters. I think Brian has some character designs and maybe like a script with a layout kind of thing, fun things we like to put in there to show people some of the process.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And then I noticed, and I'm looking right now, this was an update from September 29th. It says here, and I'm assuming this is from Sean. Brian, Doug, and I are all huge football fans. We wanted to take a moment away from Thomas River to tell you about a book we're all excited about. You Should Be To the Trap, a graphic novel from Lance Briggs and Kyle Higgins. Now, I didn't know if there was if you guys were like offering any sort of like joint effort beyond the promotion for the Trap. It's funny, I'm talking to Lance and Kyle tomorrow, and that's why I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? So tell me, is it just a nice little commercial for the guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge football fan, always have been. And I was actually living in Chicago the year the 85 Bears won it.
Go on.
So, that was like an amazing year for me just in football. And I'm a huge fan of Lance Briggs. I was a linebacker in high school, so,
Oh, wow.
I'm always going to identify with those kind of guys. I wasn't anywhere near their level, trust me. But yeah, I mean, and I've met Kyle a couple of times, and he's always been a wonderful person. So, when they reached out to us and said, hey, we're kind of doing a Kickstarter, would you guys, give us a little promo? And we're like, of course, we love you guys.
That's awesome.
But the fact that you bring up, like, is there any like connection there? We haven't thought of doing one yet, but that's actually like, that could be an interesting thing to think about, going forward. Like, is there a way to like build this community to where we're all working together? Because I like that idea, John. That's a very intriguing idea.
Well, honestly, man, again, this is why it's really interesting watching Kickstarter and the community that builds around it. And it's a recurring conversation on Word Balloon with creators that do it, that Kickstarter is its own community in a lot of ways as well, alongside the direct market. and which is great. And it really does kind of feed onto itself, and that they'll support. A lot of Kickstarter people will support one book and discover another like-minded book, and so there is that kind of synergy. So that's great to hear. And it's funny you say that about living in Chicago in '85. I'm born and bred in Chicago. It's still based in Chicago. The year of the '85 Bears, I was downstate still in school, but I worked for one of the radio stations down there, and we were the local affiliate for Bears games. So I actually produced the Super Bowl and the entire season for the local audience down in Bloomington, Illinois. And I worked in sports radio for 16 years.
Wow.
10 of them at the Score from the sports talk station. And it's so funny because I missed Lance probably by just a couple of years in terms of when I left the Score. And I'm going to have to really look at his stats again, because I know he played for like 7 or 8 years, if not 9, something like that. But also, mentioning you're a linebacker too, one of my best friends in sports was the great Doug Buffone.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I've met Butkus, and Butkus is a great guy. And we lost Gale Stairs a couple weeks ago, and he was a good friend as well. But yeah, Dougie was really one of my favorite people in the world, and so funny, and just a great all the Chicago. I mean, Chicago's a blue collar city. I mean, we're the third largest city, but we appreciate our cultural side and our blue collar sides. And most of the players from all the major teams and stuff are really just down to earth good guys. And especially from that 60s and 70s era where it wasn't big money. They had regular jobs on the off season, and they appreciated the opportunity to play pro. And Doug was just absolutely one of those guys, and he was the best. He really was. He was like an older brother to me in a lot of ways. And very, very funny. Just a good guy. So that's awesome that you can relate to these guys on that level too.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. I love it.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I've been, as I said, I've been enjoying your stories, and I want to get the title right. So I'm gonna check on my. Okay, there it is. Yeah, I wanted to check on my Kindle. The Hard Place. Really great crime story that you did.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely, man. Tell us a little bit about The Hard Place. Yeah.
Well, the Hard Place, just to give you like the quick, like you said earlier, the 10-cent pitch. Like, it's about a former, crime driver. I can't think of the right term. Professional driver, basically.
Wheelman.
There you go. A wheelman who's just served his term. He's done his prison time. He's ready to get out of prison, start leading a normal life. Doesn't want any part of that life anymore. And of course, immediately gets drawn back in. And in the middle of it, he's caught up in this bank robbery with 2 guys in masks who are most likely going to kill him. So the fact that he's driving for him and he gets caught on TV, the police want him dead, and so does the Russian mob. So, it's like everybody's, there's no way for him to get out. That's where, that's where the title came from, The Hard Place. And Nick Rommel was the artist on that. And man, Nick is just, what he does on the page is magnificent. He's a good guy, and like, he was easy to work with. And just beautiful stuff. He has a tattoo shop now, and so he's on the side. But you saw it. He just, everything he does, it's got so much energy to it. And it's so beautiful to look at.
It's a great looking book, and it reads great. Again, we're of the same world, because I'm a big crime film fan and a big crime comics fan. I'm so glad that the crime genre came back to comics as big as it has in the last 20 or so years. And that really, we're getting some really great stories and beautiful art, but it's exciting. It's, obviously superheroes are all about action. Crime can be all about action as well. And I'm always happy to find, some good crime comics, and happy to recommend them. And I can honestly say that your stuff is great examples of that.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me.
Definitely. Absolutely. Tell me about the ride. Because how did that happen? Because, it was great timing, because I remember those short films that BMW was making for The Driver with Clive Owen.
Right.
And it seemed like the ride came out right around that same time. And I wonder if that was an inspiration to try that as a genre.
No, actually, it was just a happy accident. And the funny part about that, I don't know if you knew this or not, but The Drive came out through Dark Horse. They actually did a comic based on that, and it was written by Matt Wagner. So
Yes.
we the same like period in the year, and it was just kind of like everybody's like, this is weird, you know. So it was just kind of like a fun thing. But the ride was honestly, Kevin and I had both been managers in comic. He actually owned his own comic book store, but I was a manager for a store for a couple of years, and we got together and we were, we'd always talked about, we'd sit down and do what everybody does, right? Like, oh, if Marvel did this, they'd make more money, or if DC did that, they'd make more money. And one day we just sat down and we, like, it's time to shut up and just do it. Like, how can we do this? And we knew we wanted the right concept because we had all these friends like Cully Hamner and Brian Stelfreeze and Jason Pearson and Adam Hughes. And we knew those guys couldn't commit to like a full miniseries. So we came up with this idea of like, how could we do like these short 11-page chapters? And Brian and Cully were instrumental in deciding this. And they were like, yeah, I can do a half a book for you. And so that's where the whole ride premise came from. And so we knew we wanted to do crime. Brian was adamant that we have a car, so like he loves drawing cars. And so just kind of like all that kind of stuff just kind of built up on top of itself until we came up with this thing for the ride. And it was all like, okay, Cully and Brian are going to do the first 2 chapters. Then Georges Genty and Dexter Vines are going to do the 3rd one. And Jason Pearson's going to do the 4th one. And it just kind of built from there. And Kevin and I wanted to come up with something that we could do different stories about, but didn't have to be an ongoing. It's like, hey, we can do this when we have the right talent to do it.
That's awesome.
That's where it built from.
That's great, man. So how many chapters did the ride, or how many issues did the ride end up being?
Well, we just did a new one last year.
I forgot about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we did the Ride Burning Desire, which actually has like an Adam Hughes actually did some interior pages on the first one.
Wow.
Blew it away. And so I'm trying to think. We have at least 4 trades worth of material. So, over the years, probably like, what is that? Probably 20, 25 issues.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That's cool. That's great, man. Very, very cool. And then one of your more bizarre stories, right? Plastic?
Yeah.
Talk about Plastic for a second.
Plastic was the one that that's got a weird story. I came up with the idea, believe it or not, on a road trip with Brian Stelfreeze and Eric Layton, who's an inker. And we were traveling from Atlanta to Baltimore. We decided we were just going to drive it. And we crossed the Virginia state line. And what struck me about Virginia was their sign wasn't like, welcome to Virginia. It was buckle up, Virginia. And so things started clicking in my mind, and I came up with this character of Virginia and somebody telling her she needed to buckle up. And honestly, that's where everything from that point kind of created itself. And so then I came up with, here we have this retired serial killer. Virginia happens to be a blow-up doll. And, he's in love with her, and somebody takes it from him. So I kind of wanted to play with that, like, don't judge a book by its cover. And so Edwin, the main character, is that kind of like, he looks very unassuming. He kind of drives around the backcountry in an old brown LTD, just kind of doing his old thing. And you wouldn't think anything about him, right? You'd just be like, oh, here's another, normal guy. But when you take the one thing in the world he loves more than anything, you find out he's a serial killer. It's like, there's no way out of that, right? You've seen all the same horror movies I have. It's like you take something from Michael Myers, you're not going to get away with that.
That's outstanding, man. No, I have not read Plastic yet, but going through your bibliography, I came across it. I'm like, we're going to have to talk about Plastic for a second. That's fantastic.
It was interesting even from like Daniel Hilliard, the artist of the book. He and I work really close together. He's an Englishman who actually lives in Spain, and he's wonderful to work with. And so I gave him all these different concepts, and Plastic was in one of them, and said, hey, which one do you want to work on? And he said, I want to work on Plastic. And then we went to Kevin Gardner at 12 Gauge, and we're just like, Daniel and I want to do this book. And Kevin read the pitch, and he goes, oh, no way. I'm not touching this. and so Daniel and I were like, well, I'm not sure you understand what we're saying. We're going to do it. Like, and you can either come along for the ride or not come along for the ride. And Kevin thought about it for a week, and he goes, okay. But there were plenty of people along the way. They were like, there's no way you guys should do this book. It's going to ruin your careers. And, then we pitched it to Eric Stevenson at Image. and he loved it. And then I guess the next day he showed it to Robert Kirkman, and Robert Kirkman loved it and sent us a pull quote for the book immediately without us even asking.
That's
and
great.
So, yeah, it was just one of those wonderful, like, snowball effects. You're rolling down the hill and everything kind of picks up speed as it's going.
But that's what's awesome, man. And truly, I love the audacity of a lot of comic creators. And it reminds me of Sam Humphries, and I forget who his collaborator was on Our Love is Real.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the future, and it was about a man-dog romantic relationship set in the future. And it's like, good for you guys. Somewhere Russ Heath is smiling when he hears about concepts like plastic and Our Love is Real. So I think that's great. Michael Cooper has a question, and I'm going to bring it up. 1 second. Here it is. Which Bond does Thomas River come the closest to in terms of personality? The Connery British Bond, the coldness of Craig, the smooth, relaxed Moore Bond, or the George Lazenby? Never mind. Hey, nothing wrong with George. As I'm the Father Flanagan of James Bond. There's no such thing as a bad James Bond. They were all either over or under. Well, in the case of Lazenby, he has the greatest movie surrounding him, and I think because of I got his James Bond. But go on, your thoughts on comparing Thomas River to James Bond?
I mean, that's a tough one because I think, and I'm with you. I love James Bond. Like, I was a kid when the Roger Moore movies were coming out, and so I actually got to meet Roger Moore once when they were filming some stuff in the place I was born in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Was that for Live and Let Die?
I'm trying to remember which one did they have them going over the waterfall in the boats, like the speed boats.
Yeah. I think it was either Live and Let Die or it was oh God, was it? Now I'm blanking. No, it was in Live and Let Die because Live and Let Die had kind of the blaxploitation component to it as well. And yeah, they were in like kind of the Florida, if they went to Florida Keys, but yeah, they had all the gators and Sheriff Pepper and everything in it.
So yeah, I think So I mean, but comparing Thomas River to one of them is tougher because we purposely didn't want to do James Bond. James Bond is a great character. He's got his thing. We kind of wanted to go a little bit more towards the regular guy, even though, Thomas is pretty smart and obviously an incredible operative. I think I would lean more towards he's more like Daniel Craig just because it's more modern, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there are parts of like, I think Sean Connery more so than say Roger Moore, because, Roger Moore what I loved about those is he was so over the top, but you didn't believe any of it. Like if he got in a fight, you didn't believe any of it. There's no way this guy's beating these people up. Sean Connery, obviously Daniel Craig, he did.
That's really interesting because honestly, prior to him taking over Bond, I was watching reruns of The Saint, TV show from the 60s. Same guy. And it's funny, and Michael agrees, it must be Live and Let Die. That's funny because literally, again, showing my age, that's the first Bond I saw in the theaters. Was Moore's first one. And it's weird, and again, showing my age, the first two times I saw Dr. No, and I'm assuming either From Russia with Love or Goldfinger, I thought they were black and white movies because I first saw them on a black and white television.
Oh, wow. And
it really wasn't until VHS that I'm like, oh, these are in color. I didn't know, So, but I'm a massive Bond fan. But also, it is good that a lot of spy films and TV and movies, or rather books, shy away from Bond because there's a lot to explore there. And Brian said the same thing last week, that he considers Thomas kind of a working class spy, but a very capable working class spy. So that's cool. No, I think that's awesome. It's Moonraker where Moore escapes being chased by Jaws going over the falls in a glider. Was he in the glider?
That's the one. It was
okay.
Moonraker. Yeah.
Okay. There you go, man.
Yeah.
That's fun. And I'm sure too, Moonraker's a really interesting movie, but I kind of like that Cubby Broccoli was like, okay, enough of the gadgets, enough. I mean, we're really kind of going crazy here. Let's get back to basics. And that's why, like, For Your Eyes Only was such a great, like, okay, let's bring Bond literally back to Earth and, get back to cool espionage and stuff. And there's a lot more action to explore beyond giving him a laser gun. So
yeah, it did get a little carried away to where it was like the solution for every problem he ran into was a gadget. It became a little too, MacGuffin like, and so I totally agreed when they switched directions.
Absolutely. So tell me about your crime influences. What did you read? What did you watch?
Most of it's watching for me. Growing up, I was a TV kid.
Sure.
And so a lot of it, I'm still a huge Hitchcock fan. So anytime Hitchcock, anything Hitchcock, it's like, and surprisingly, like it turns into like, it jumps from there to more like the 80s and maybe, late 80s, early 90s when you start getting into stuff like Speed. Speed was a huge impact on me because I was like, oh my God, you can do a nonstop action movie and it still be a crime movie and still have character involved. I want more of this. And so like there's that mix of like modern and old because I'm a huge Hitchcock fan and love all of his. As a matter of fact, I just watched all of them again like last week. I was going through and just watching old Hitchcock movies because I love them so much. And so for me, I think that's why there's always like a little weird creepiness to my crime stuff because I got that Hitchcock influence and I'm like, yeah, it's not just straight up crime. It's like there's a little bit more to it. There's some creepiness going on in there. And then, I read so much, it's hard to like remember everything. Obviously the Spencer novels.
Oh, I'm a big Parker fan. I hear you, man.
Then you start looking at comics too. Dark Knight was a huge impact on me from a crime perspective. I loved what Frank Miller did to that. Daredevil for the longest time was just a really solid, good crime comic.
Yeah.
And so you mix all those together. And I think what was great about like Daredevil and Dark Knight was that they showed me you could do it in a comic format and how do you cut that versus writing it for a movie or TV. And so, and then you throw in all the stuff, I'm sure you're going to recognize, like growing up as a kid, Barnaby Jones and Agatha Christie and, and all that kind of stuff. Like all that stuff kind of mixes in there, but those are weird influences, but they're there, they're obviously there.
I understand, man. It's so fun. I'm sure you're a Me TV person. Mm-hmm. And good Lord, in the overnight hours, Mannix and Barnaby Jones and Cannon.
Yeah.
Poor William Conrad, man, can barely get out of his car seat, let alone chase down a bad guy. But he did it. All those Universal crime procedurals, they absolutely fascinate me. And did you ever see that Adam West parody that Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel made called Look Well?
Yeah.
All the jokes about that, man, it's the truth. All those shows, really did kind of run into each other. And, Richard Anderson, Oscar Goldman from $6 Million Man was a guest star probably on all of them, being under contract to Universal. No, honestly, that kind of TV factory and the way they churned those police procedurals out absolutely fascinates me. You know what I've been DVRing, speaking of Me TV, is Police Story.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great anthology show. And it's so, and some of the weird pairings, like, and this is always the great thing about television, you get stars on the way up and also older stars hanging on. And I saw a Police Story recently, and it was Sylvester Stallone was the junior police partner of Chuck Connors.
Oh, wow.
So you got the Rifleman and Rocky as a cop team. And it's like, you had me at a low. That sounds fantastic. Where do I watch? So I'm a big fan of Police Story in particular. And no, I hear I totally, and like I said, when you mentioned Spencer, I'm a massive Robert Parker fan. And I like what Ace Atkins has done with the character since. I was a little hesitant. And I'll be honest, comic book name dropping, but like Walt Simonson's like, no, actually, they're still good, John. You should still read them. I'm like, all right. And he was right. They're good. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
And he's like, why would you worry about another writer? He goes, you've been reading comic books for years, with different writers, same character. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. All right, fine. I'll try it. So, yeah, no, I'm a big fan of all that stuff. You mentioned Hitchcock. What's your favorite Hitchcock movie?
Oh, still to this day, Rear Window. Love Rear Window.
Cool. Sure.
Oh, yeah. Hands down. Still my favorite. Psycho is a close second. Psycho, even today, to me, is still a fantastic film.
Oh, my God, yes. Now, for me, North by Northwest is my favorite Hitchcock, but Rear Window is my second favorite Hitchcock.
That
so
works.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time I saw Rear Window, it just blew me away from a storytelling perspective because they pretty much shot it from his apartment, and up to that point, nobody had ever tried to do that, like a single set entire movie, TV show, yes, movie, no. And I mean, and of course, Jimmy Stewart, love Jimmy Stewart.
I'm the same way, man. Yeah. Well, and in the '80s, and again, you're old enough that you remember too. They had that handful of Hitchcock movies that stopped being on TV or in theaters for like a few years, like over 10 years or something. And after Hitchcock passed away, all of a sudden, they came back in the theaters. And again, I was down at Illinois State University finishing college, and they probably wouldn't play in Bloomington, but they'd play in Chicago, and we would take road trips to go see Rear Window and Vertigo and the Trouble with Harry. I remember was one of them as well. There were like 4 or 5 of them that they released that way. And yeah, Rear Window, we were all just like, man, that's like you said. And also, do you watch Alfred Hitchcock's Presents, the television show?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
It's interesting because every now and then in between movies, he'd actually direct a few.
Yeah.
And he kind of enjoyed the challenge of the shorter shooting schedule and the limitations of television. And I really love that about Hitchcock, that it was kind of like an intellectual game to him of, let me see if I can do this and let me see if I can do it well. So those handful that he directed, easy to find on the internet, everybody. That stuff is awesome. So, that's funny here. That goes, that Stallone cop later grew up to be the sheriff in Copland. Sure. In our head canon, why not, man? That's awesome. Very funny. Yeah, no, I'm a what do you think of the current crime procedurals like Lucifer or even The Mentalist in Elementary, where they kind of have these like big brains, well, in the case of Lucifer, obviously even it's the devil solving crimes, which is hilarious. What do you think of that stuff?
I mean, I love it. I'm as long as it's written well, and and I'm having fun and enjoying watching the stories. I like the regular Criminal Minds. I mean, I know it's very formulaic. I love the characters that they've built. I love how they try to throw a wrench in there every now and then. One I'd say check out if you haven't. It's on Netflix and it's just called Criminal. Have you heard of this one yet?
No, tell me.
Oh, dude, I had a friend recommend it to me and I'm like blown away. Like, it's called Criminal and there's like a UK, a Spain, a France. I've started the first season of the UK, and basically the whole thing is in an interrogation room.
Oh.
And dude, it's like, I mean, the way they subtly hint stuff towards you, and you're going through this like constant tension of like, you got the criminal who's trying to get away with it, and the interrogators are trying to get him to admit something, and they tell a story through this, and it's fantastic.
So it's always just the interrogation room and that kind of back and oh, that's great. And I got to say, I love European procedurals. Mm-hmm. I'm sure by you, they have a public television channel like this as well. But it's literally all the foreign language criminal procedurals from Italy, from Germany, from Sweden. And it's great because I am fascinated by how they handle the procedural format.
Yes, I love even just the way they shoot things differently. We've become so accustomed to like what we see from an American POV. And then you get something from France or Italy or Spain, and they're doing things totally different. You're like, everybody should be doing it this way. It's like, and it's so interesting. It actually impacts how I tell a story in comics, because sometimes I'll be like, hey, Brian, here's this shot from this procedural from Italy. Let's duplicate that. So
that's great to hear. Literally, John Romita Jr. was saying the same thing this afternoon when we were talking. So that's great to hear, man. Michael Cooper, Doug, in terms of process, in particular the initial brainstorming of ideas, what does that process look like for you? Jotting ideas down, sticky notes all over the place, or straight to the keyboard?
I taught for a while at a Broadview Entertainment Arts University here, and dealing with the students, like you kind of have to find what works for you. And honestly, it changes a lot depending on the idea. Sometimes, like with plastic, the idea comes so fully formed to you that it's easier to go to, right into like, here's the entire story on paper. And then other times you just got a sliver of a scene, or maybe even just a line. And so that's a Post-it note. And then you're trying to, you get the Post-it notes out and you're building around it, trying to figure out what makes it work. And I'm slow. I tell everybody this all, like, writing wise, I'm probably one of the slower comic book writers. And it's because I have this very tedious process that I go through. So I'm like, I go and I write a log line. And if the log line sounds good to me, then I build to a paragraph. And then from a paragraph, I'll build to like multiple paragraphs. Then I break that down like issue by issue, then page by page, and then panel by panel. And then I write a script. So it takes me a little bit longer, I think, than most people. But like, that's been my process for a long time. That's what I enjoy.
That's cool. I got another book I wanted to ask you about. Is it the initials ICE or is it ICE?
Oh, what's ICE? Yep. I mean, I know that's not that's not a very popular thing at the moment. But
sure.
When we were writing it, I actually have a friend who works for ICE, and it was just so interesting to hear him and like his take on how things work, because at the FBI and the CIA and even local police departments would almost always take an ICE agent with them, because they enforce so many laws that are on the books that 9 times out of 10, there's something, that maybe isn't in the FBI's jurisdiction, but is in the ICE's jurisdiction that they can get you on. And so, Daniel and Hilliard, that's where he and I met. That's how we first started working together. And if you can tell by the covers, initially, Dwayne Johnson was involved. And this was going to be like his, we were hoping anyway, it was going to be like his next franchise. And at the same time, he got offered the first Fast and Furious role.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, he said basically he had to choose between the two, and I was like, I can't blame you, like, run with that one. But yeah, it was basically ICE agents going around. The first one was between, there was kind of a murder that took place on the Texas-Mexico border. And there were these 2 friends who were ICE agents who, had to come in here and try to solve it. Got completely out of control. And then another one, we dealt with somebody trying to smuggle arms in through Canada, which actually happens apparently. And it was, I think it was Irish. It was the Irish mob that was doing it. And then probably my favorite one, we ended up in Louisiana, and there was a terrorist attack coming from the Ukraine through the Louisiana port. That's how they got entry. And they were going to figure out how to take down the electrical grid. And they wore masks, made it kind of creepy, which was a lot of fun. And then you're in New Orleans and the swamps and all that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun. But
were they individual issues of these problems, or were they full story arcs?
Well, they were full story arcs. Each one was like a 4 or 5 issue miniseries.
Sure. Okay. Wow, I didn't realize the series went that long. That's great, man. And it's interesting. So yeah, you did that with Dwayne Johnson. You did OCT with Rosario and everything. Were there other celebrities that you guys worked with to try and figure out possible properties?
Oh yeah, dude, I've been so lucky in that regard, especially with all the 12 gauge stuff. Like, for a while we were publishing the Boondock Saints comic. So we got to work with Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flannery. Both, obviously this was before Walking Dead for Norman Reedus, but those guys were fantastic to be around and hang out with. Mick Foley, don't know if you're a huge wrestling fan, but I'm a Marvel fan. Yeah.
Sure.
And so, Mick Foley did a comic. He wrote a comic book, co-wrote a comic book for 12 gauge, and got to meet him. So that was like a huge, childhood dream come true for me. And it was kind of comical, because at one point I was kind of helping run his line, and he's getting ready. And so I said something, I think he was on his cell phone. And I said to the person that was waiting in line, I was like, "Oh, I bet you didn't think you were going to get a shot of Mick Foley on his cell phone." And Mick gave me like this look like he was going to crush my skull. And I was like apologizing left and right. And then I said to him, I was like, I have no doubt, no matter what I do to you, I can't possibly cause you a bit of pain. I know that in the deepest part of my soul. I said, but I also know you can't catch me. And I'll keep running until the end of my days, because there's nothing I can do to you that you haven't been, you've seen Mick,
oh yeah, he's a giant.
I could probably stab Mick and he would still beat me up. There's nothing I can do to Mick Foley. Yeah. So, but he was wonderful. He was just such a nice and caring guy.
That's awesome, man. No, and mentioning the Boondock Saints, I love both movies. I think they're great. And it's so funny. I always felt that if they were smart, and I know there's the possibility that Harrison Ford might still make one more Indiana Jones film. He better hurry.
Yeah.
But regardless, I really think as a bridge, before they bring in a new guy to be young Indy again, they ought to let Sean do one movie.
Yeah.
Because he was Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And in fact, Artie Baltazar actually said that to him as well at Comic-Con one year. And it's like, I'm serious. Like they should let you make one movie as an adult because, my generation would accept you as Indiana Jones. And he said, that's great to hear. He goes, let's talk to Disney and make that happen. And it's like, yeah, God only knows,
Yeah. I mean, and I hung out quite a bit with Sean at some of the shows and stuff. He and I, for some reason, were always the first one. We'd always get there about an hour early. There's something about, using sports as well. Like there's something about getting to the field a little bit early and just having a chance to like sit and get comfortable with your environment. And I think Sean both did that. So Sean and I at San Diego one year, I think we got there 3 days, an hour early, and we just sat and talked. And dude, he's such a nice guy and such a warm, soul that like he actually cares about everybody, and he just wants his fans to be happy. And
that's cool.
Just a wonderful guy.
That's awesome, man. Well, seriously. Oh, here, Michael Cooper says he's intrigued by Criminal. Sounds interesting. The best special effect is great acting. Sounds like my jam.
Yeah, you should definitely. I'm telling you guys, I'm only cool. 3, but the first 2 I absolutely like. I can't say enough. Like the first one was fantastic.
That's great to hear. And honestly, man, I mean, it's obviously it's terrible what's happening right now, but it's been very interesting to watch. And I'm sure you feel this way as well, to watch the films and television shows that have been released by the streamers, and a lot of them are great, and I'm sure are getting more eyeballs than ever because we don't have the option of going to the theater and doing other things, and we are stuck at home. And I know I'm benefiting from that in a weird way, doing stuff like this. So, what can you do?
And I think what's interesting about that is I think they're in the same boat, I think, as you would say, Brian and I were Thomas River. You've got a lot of these smaller filmmakers and TV show producers that maybe the big networks would not even consider, but the streamers are letting them do stuff. And especially now when they're getting and making more money, they're like, hey, let's give these guys a shot. And they're delivering, and they're doing stuff differently. And it's like, I'm with you. It's incredible.
Yeah. Is 12 Gauge getting interest from streamers about potential shows or films?
Yeah. I mean, even from day one, back when we first did the ride, I mean, the ride's been optioned a couple of times, which is, always kind of fun to go through that stuff.
Sure.
Hollywood is just it's wonderful and it's strange at the same time. Like it's you try to apply business logic to a lot of their decisions and you find out that's not, it's all gut instinct. And so, luckily we've got a lot of things moving forward in that regard as far as like getting things made, but with Hollywood, you just don't know when things are going to go and when things are going to just stop instantly. It's such a weird place.
No, you're right. And I know some creators, they're thrilled when their things get turned into movies and they have great experiences. Rucka just went through that with the Old Guard and is very happy with everything. And then I won't name other creators that have had recent adaptations made into film. And I'm like, hey, you want to talk about it? And it's like, nah, not really. It's like, I'm so disappointed what they did with it. Another positive one was Victor Santos and Polar. And Polar is a great Euro crime film. And I thought they did a hell of a job adapting his great comics into a very slick movie. And I really, and again, that was straight to Netflix. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Netflix right now, I mean, they seem to be like, I love the Old Guard and what Greg did with that. And they're kind of letting people tell their story versus trying to second guess everything. And, I'm sure you've read the same horror stories I've had where they're like, hey, you need to put aliens in your, the hard place. And you're like, aliens don't belong in the hard place. And they're like, yeah, but it'll make it cool. And you're like, no, it won't. So I think Netflix seems to be like listening to the actual creators of the shows and going, listen, let's trust them. They have a vision. Let's follow it. And I think that's why you're seeing really good stuff coming from them right now.
No, I agree, man. Well, there's only 9 days left for Thomas River. But and congratulations on reaching your goal. So the first issue is 48 pages. So at this point, everybody, if you haven't jumped in, great opportunity to get on this first issue, 48 pages. Brian Stelfreeze, Doug Wagner doing what they do best. And seriously, man, congrats on the other crime stuff that you've made, and continued success. It's great to meet you, and it's been a pleasure reading your stuff, and I look forward to new stuff as well. Hang out as I wrap up, because I want to ask you a question off the air, see if this might interest you or whatever. But Doug Wagner, everybody, thanks a lot, Doug.
Thank you, everybody.
There we go. So that wraps up today's Word Balloon Live. Earlier, if you missed it, I had the opportunity to talk to John Romita Jr. Tomorrow, as I mentioned to Doug, I'm talking to Lance Briggs and Cal Higgins about The Trap, their brand new Kickstarter and book that they're working on. Wednesday's going to be fun, talking to Anthony Snyder, whose father was the great Jimmy the Greek, the odds maker. And we're going to talk, because Anthony's in the comic book art business. We're going to talk about that and about his dad and a lot of other things. And then Chris Cantwell's going to join us as well, of course, coming off his debut on Iron Man, and talking about his TV work from Halt and Catch Fire to developing, it's Paper Dolls, right? Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang. Chris is the showrunner of that. So looking forward to that conversation. And on Friday, it's Kelly Thompson, and it's going to be a great chance to talk to the great Marvel writer and see what's happening with her. So thanks a lot. And here, a final comment from Michael Cooper. I think now more than ever, consumers want to support creators directly. Thank you, Doug, for sharing your time. Well said, Michael. And thanks a lot for watching, everybody. As always, stay safe, stay happy.